Hello, good evening. Welcome to our Tuesday special meeting here. Mr. O'Malley, Deputy Administrator,
Yes, Mr.
Administrator O'Malley, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My confusion was that Administrator O'Malley does a lot around here, so thank you very much. We have members of our Housing Committee here. Thank you so much. If you two can please introduce yourselves and please proceed.
My name is Kara Corshane, and I'm the outgoing chair of the Housing Committee.
My name is Jeffrey Padham. I'm the multi-unit representative on the Housing Committee.
We are here to present to you for your yearly meeting / presentation from the Housing Committee. You'll notice that we have the wrong date on the first slide. Promise that it'll go better from here, everybody. Supposed to be last Tuesday, but of course the school budget took precedence, which is totally understandable, and Dash and I are happy to be here tonight to talk with you all about housing in Lewiston. So we are going to provide you with a couple of updates regarding housing in Lewiston. We will review the housing scorecard that you should have received in your packets, and a committee recommendation that we also sent along to you in advance of this presentation. So a couple of housing updates. As you probably have realized if you've gone up Pine Street at one point in the last however many months, Wedgwood is one of the newest housing developments that's being built right now. It's 82 units, 9 buildings, 9 of which are new. And they're 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units. And there are 60 affordable and 22 market rate. They are part of the city's transformation plan, which was developed as a guide to the tree streets, provide a vision for the future for the tree streets. And there is $30 million that the feds gave to Lewiston for the Choice Implementation Grant, which is in part funding the site that you see here, which was provided to us thanks to Russ Dillingham from the Sun Journal. He very kindly sent along stills from some drone footage. So I circled some of the spaces here just to kind of lead you through a couple of the parts of the site. So the first circle is the Pierce Street side. And this part will be the first completed part of the development. And folks will probably start moving in there at some point in the fall. And those are townhouse-like developments, and they are beautiful. They're really nice. They're really well-suited to families, accessible. And they're really going to be a great addition to the housing that we have here in Lewiston. Number 2 is the Wedgwood house itself, and that is going through a historical renovation and is probably the most challenging aspect of this work because it requires a lot of commitment to what it looked like before in order to make sure that the tax credits that are helping fund this work the rules are adhered to. And it is really truly a wonder what they're doing with that building. And I think that that building will ultimately contain 9 units. Number 3 is just kind of a catch-all for the rest of that part of the block. And as you can see, there's Bartlett Street on the right side, and number 4 there will be a couple more buildings there. So 9 buildings total, 8 new buildings, and it is going to be a really wonderful addition to our housing stock in Lewiston. Additionally, there's the Continental Mill, which will have 377 units. And as I'm sure you are all aware, we've seen a lot of press about this recently, their market rate. And that will join the Picker House Lofts, which has 72 units, 46 of which are workforce housing and 26 are market rate. Here is DeWitt, which is also part of the Choice neighborhood implementation work. 2 buildings, 104 units. There are 68 one-bedroom, 36 two-bedroom, 21 market rate, and the first floor of each building is commercial space. A quick update about some new housing opportunities. In 2022, LD 2003 was passed and went into effect last summer. And LD 2003 allows a number of different new approaches to housing and kind of created more space to make sure that people could build accessory dwelling units, also known as in-law apartments. But as you can see in the image, the idea of an in-law apartment has shifted slightly. This is perhaps not your grandmother's in-law apartment. And there also, in LD 2003, is pretty notable an increase in density allowance. So if you have a single-family lot, you can now have 2 to 4 units on that single-family lot. That is about the extent of my expertise in this particular thing, but if you have questions about that, planning and code are a wealth of knowledge for that. So, the scorecard that you all have in your packet. We created this scorecard with the intention of providing information to all of you to help inform your policy decisions. And it's meant to be a reliable look at year-over-year data when possible, instead of sort of relying on anecdotal evidence, which is also important, but we want to make sure that you're looking at the same data when making policy decisions. Our hope is that you keep a copy of this and take a look at it and think through the implications when you're making housing policy decisions. This is meant to be a resource to help guide you and sort of, as I mentioned, provide some information for you to have a really good basis of understanding of what already exists and as you look toward what is possible. The data here does not contain a lot of good news. As I'm sure you all know, housing is a particularly challenging thing right now for many, many people. And as you probably have seen in the news, home prices are at a record high in Maine. We're about to see an increase in insurance because of climate change. And of course, all of these things keep people in the rental market longer, which inflates the cost of rent. And that is really challenging when there is not a lot of vacancy to begin with. And so we really don't have what we would consider a healthy market right now. Good.
Not yet.
Most of the new housing being built in Lewiston is affordable, in affordable developments, which is to say income restricted with some market rate mixed in. And the reality is, as I think we've said to you before, that we need all kinds of housing to address the housing shortage that we have here. And after decades as a nation of underinvesting in housing, this is a challenge that a lot of communities are facing. People are having trouble with affordability, and then there's also a mismatch between what is available and what is needed. I think one of the things that we hear about the most are seniors who live in these big houses where they raise their families and they want to age in place, but they have, a 3-story house and it's not really feasible for them income-wise anymore, but there's not enough movement in the market for them to move into an accessible home or an accessible apartment that they could afford. There are increases in evictions, increases in homeless youth, increases in lead poisoning, also seeing some pretty significant increases in vouchers that are issued and then expire because folks can't find a place to rent with those vouchers. and there's an increase in housing wait lists. As you also know, we are seeing an increase in the percentages of homes owned by people who do not live in Lewiston. And as these conditions continue, we probably will see more of this. I'm not sure if any of you have had offers on your homes by random out-of-state buyers, but that's something that we definitely hear about at the Housing Committee, and spoke with some folks from a mobile home park who had that happen, where there's a company in California that bought their mobile home park, and they're concerned. So, anything else to add there?
No?
So, one of the things that I think is particularly important to note is that the data can't tell us what choices people are making regarding which necessary expenses to cut in favor of keeping a roof over their head. What trade-offs are people making, and are they paying their housing with a credit card some months? There's a fair amount of conversation, both in this room and online, about who affordable housing is for, and a question about whether people from away are going to swoop in and take affordable housing from someone more deserving who is already here. I grew up in downtown Lewiston at 98 Pierce Street, 291 Bates Street, and 92 House Street. My dad made $29,000 a year, and we were a family of 6. I am now a college graduate. I own a small business, and I started that work 2.5 years ago. I also always have an opinion and have a hard time not giving away my time for free. I've recently recognized that if I'm going to support myself and my daughter, I have to step down from the Housing Committee, because at times I've spent 10 to 15 hours a week on Housing Committee work. That is somewhere in the ballpark of $1,000 to $1,875 what I would charge a client. I made $36,000 last year. I am the exact demographic who could move into an affordable unit at Wedgwood. 45% of my income last year went to paying for my housing, which by definition means I'm housing cost burdened. Having said that, I love my landlords, who are 2 sweet people who live downstairs from me, and they remind me very much of my French grandparents. And I already live here. My beautiful daughter is already in the school system, and I could move from a non-affordable unit to an affordable one without adversely impacting the median income or creating an additional burden on the school system. 2 arguments that people make against affordable housing. And in fact, if I did move, that would probably increase the support you find people get from me regarding housing policy. We have this perception that the people who benefit from the new housing that we build here are people that are not already living here. We also turn around and critique teachers who speak up at budget meetings because they don't live here and they don't need to deal with taxes. I would note that living here and affording to live here on a teacher's salary is not easy, and I do not begrudge any of them for not living here because they cannot afford it. I want to put a face to these issues because things like this are not reflected in the data. Stories like mine are stories that the data cannot tell. Last time I was before you, I noted that part of solving our community's issues with homelessness is that we cannot build our community's capacity for shelters alone. We have to invest in housing, and we need to have enough housing for all of our residents to live in a safe home they can afford. The response from some of you and from others, particularly online, is we can't do that because that is not reasonable. And I want you, as you can continue to make policy decisions that impact everyone in this city, to ask yourself, how many people experiencing homelessness is reasonable? How many kids being poisoned by lead whose parents are also being poisoned by the homes they live in, reasonable? The numbers on the scorecard tell an important part of the story, but they are nothing if we do not understand the very real impact they have on people's lives. If you can't see the multitude of stories contained in these numbers, and indeed in this community, you are very much missing the point. Which brings us to our next point, which is our most recent committee recommendation. We are a committee of volunteers, and the amount of work required to provide the council with the data, policy recommendations, and advice to do so well is not that of a volunteer committee. That does not mean that there is not a place for a volunteer committee with regard to this work. There is. But the council and administration cannot continue to rely on unpaid labor for this level of expertise. My seat on the council is that of a Lewiston homeowner, and yes, I do still technically own a house, though I'm currently renting. It is not that of a housing policy expert with a significant expertise in communications. I have spent many, many hours, as have others on this committee, doing staff-level work with staff-level expectations, including the timing of when I appear before you, which has been at the cost of time with my daughter. The expertise you have benefited from is not required of this seat, and I've been happy to provide it because I love this community with my whole heart. And the city cannot continue to rely on the patchwork of capacity woven with volunteers' surprise expertise and unpaid work, and the capacity that exists among your many capable staff who are also tasked with so many, many other things to do the significant work required to address housing challenges in this city. Housing is too complicated, and continuing as we have is not feasible, reasonable, or fair to anyone, from taxpayers experiencing property tax increases, to people paying high rent prices, to families who live in their cars. I understand that we are putting this recommendation before you when you're about to cast a vote once again for the school budget. This recommendation does not come to you lightly, and as we noted in our memo, there are many different funding sources available that could be combined to create a municipal housing position. We also noted that we have seen a few opportunities pass us by because we, the Housing Committee, did not have the capacity necessary to take advantage of them. We have left money on the table, and we cannot afford to do that with regard to housing. We hope you take this recommendation into consideration with that understanding, and with the understanding that in order to make the changes our city so desperately needs, the path forward to solving these issues means that someone in a paid role needs to manage these complexities. As we sit before you tonight, I guarantee you will ask questions that will call upon the expertise Dash and I have built over the years. And if there are questions we can't answer, my guess is that a person hired to be in a position, a paid position for the city, in charge of managing our city's housing challenges would know the answer. Either way, if Dash and I can't answer your questions, the Housing Committee will answer your questions as their capacity allows. Thank you.
Questions or comments from the council? Councilor Chittum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Courchain, thank you so very much for your efforts and your diligence in chairing this committee for as long as you have, for the time that you've given. I am hearing you say that you are recommending that this council create a Department of Housing, or at least a manager of housing, as a paid staff position in the city, city budget. Is that, am I hearing you correctly?
Unless it would be a department of one, I think a position.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. You're aware, of course, that the budget has already been passed and approved on the municipal side, so this would be a consideration for the council for the next budget, which is approaching too rapidly for my taste. Thank you. I don't have any specific questions about housing, but I do want to express my appreciation to you and the other members of the Housing Committee for all of the work that you've done for developing the scorecard and for providing us with the information that we need to make intelligent policy decisions. And I will certainly take with due consideration your recommendation that we hire a staff member to not replace, but to supplement all the work that you've done on a volunteer basis. Thank you.
And I also want to thank you. And I also want to say too that, you know, the combination of Director Jeffers and Marianne Back-Taylor, who is the CDBG program manager, their help with regard to this work is instrumental. And it is yet another thing that they have to add to what they already do. Mary Ann has a lot of expertise in housing, but it is not her number one role here. And so she is wonderful and says, hey, there's this grant opportunity, and then we all just sort of watch it go by. So, thank you.
In your memo, you outlined a number of avenues or sources to potentially make this position or to have it funded by grants. Can you, I guess, elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. These are, and again, provided all by Mary Ann Taylor from Economic and Community Development. She sent these along and said that these are really good places to take a look at different, like a combination of different funds that could be used and applied for. We talked about this at the last Housing Committee meeting, and Councilor Roy said this is not going to fly unless there is some way to fund it in addition to, whatever happens with the budget next year. And Mary Ann immediately spoke up and said, I can immediately think of 3 or 4 funding sources that you could take a look at and we could apply for. And then it could be, like in a lot of nonprofits and municipal work, your job to keep your job going when you have to apply for more money to make sure you have a job next year. So there are a lot of funding sources that are probably well suited to this.
Thank you. Councilor Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kara, thank you for all the work that you've done over the years. I've got to be on the Housing Committee for a short period of time, and the work that you do is very valuable to everybody. And I really appreciate that. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Najin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Corshane, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Padam. I do have a couple of questions concerning the just really quickly looking at the stats, 112% increase in lead poisoning over a period of 1 year. Is that because we were opening up housing that normally would not be housing that would be, what's the word I'm looking for, occupiable? Is that GA housing specifically, or is that, do you know?
I don't, but one of the things that a lot of what happens here is that we collect this data and then are not the experts on how to respond to questions about it. But one of the things that we discussed as a committee the other night when we were looking at the final numbers here is that there's a potential to have been a dip. You see in 2021, there's a pretty significant decrease there, and didn't know if that was a matter of people not going to the doctor because of COVID, not getting their kid. Like a lot of people didn't go for their well child visits or their well person visits, and so don't know if that year is the outlier, and we'll know more as we continue to move forward.
Gotcha. One thing I'd like to comment is, and I brought it up multiple times, but neighborhood size development, that's something that when you look at community development block grant funding and home funding, that's usually big pieces, pots of money that go to like one project generally. But we've got 21 community gardens that were never supposed to remain community gardens forever. Those were supposed to turn into infill development housing. We've got, I could, from my window, I can see 4 different lots that used to be housing that need to be developed into housing. Those are all small and mid-sized projects, and there's funding sources that I think that we need to be able to attract, as well as what I'm saying is that a housing specialist, somebody who's able to work with some of the smaller developers in order to secure those types of funding, and then also looking at different loan vehicles where, I have a property that I've been waiting to build on for a while, and it could easily be 4 small apartments for seniors. Could I get it off the ground? I don't know. I probably need somebody to walk me through it, considering we can't apply for the rural economic development funds here in Lewiston. So again, I think that there can be purpose with this, and I think also if there was a level where the individual was managing some of the loan aspects, possibly that could pay for the position as well, because we definitely need the smaller development. We don't need 9% low-income tax credit for a 6-unit put into a neighborhood, which will never happen if we wait for large developers to do it. It just simply will not happen. Large developers are not interested in 4-unit, 6-unit, 10-unit. So
I think that's a good point with regard to a housing position. And there's if we had a person that, if a developer said, hey, I want to do this, what do I do? I think right now there's a sense that, we say, well, this person could talk to you about this part of it, this person could talk to you about this part of it, then you each talk to Public Works, then you got to talk to Planning and Code. And having somebody who holds all of that and knows enough about the landscape, including, there are, as you were saying that, I was thinking about 2 consultants that I know who used to work for big developers who help, there's one who helped Save Voices with one of their recent work in Farmington, I think. And so there's an opportunity here if there is somebody to hold all of that and to create some sort of cohesion there.
I would just like to add to that as well. You mentioned Safe Voices, and I think about the way in which we're very concerned about managing a shelter aspect here in the city, and I know we're moving towards being able to stand something up, but ultimately, when you look at, again, BRAP and PATH vouchers not being accepted here, you look at what Telford Housing has done in Brunswick, you look at what Avesta has done in Portland, there is housing on that level that secures residence for people who would otherwise be on the streets. And I think that's an important aspect to think about as well.
Councilor Glant.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you both. And congratulations on getting your education moving up in the world, really. I, for one, am not in favor of a lot of this stuff, housing-wise. I look across the pond, and they've got tons and tons of market rate housing, which is tax dollars for their community to move forward. And we seem to be building items that are either affordable or below the affordable line to house people. And I know housing is important for everyone, but we seem to be the community who's wrapped around one specific area. I mean, the numbers you gave us show that 75% is going to be that type of housing, and only 25% are marketable. Teachers are moving across to Auburn to live because they have nice housing, affordable housing, market rate housing, and we haven't built any. Okay, I just have not seen come across us in the time that I have been here and previously as a planning board member, where we're moving in that direction. I'd support a person you're talking about if their venture is going to be to bring things into the community that's going to lift us up. Okay, not just make housing for people who need it. I mean, it's one of those tough things to go back and forth on.
Yeah.
But quite frankly, we're going backwards. Percentage-wise, all this housing you just presented to us is going to take our mean income average and drop it, which then doesn't attract what? Businesses, other people to build the stuff he's talking about.
I think too, though, that part of the point here is that people who need housing that they can afford are already here. And so it's not so much that we're going to attract all these folks who suddenly see all this housing and then it's gobbled up by all these people who aren't here already. So that's point one. I think point two is that we agree that we need housing of all types. And to me, if you have somebody dedicated to making sure that we are attracting developers, attracting investors, and people have a person to go to when they want to do that kind of investment, then you will see the market rate housing that you, Councilor Gallant, would like to see. And part of the challenge here is that if we don't have somebody for those folks to talk to, or if it's a number of different people that they end up having to talk to, we're not investing in the way that we should be. And that's we can only, the housing that gets built here is the housing that developers want to build here.
I agree wholeheartedly with the idea of the individual in doing that. I'm concerned with grant money that comes from an area where it's all below or at poverty line, because then they're driven to look for those kind of issues in those kind of areas. I think our own economic development department could use a person just like you're talking about. I would highly support that next year in the budget. But I need to know that they're going to be able to focus on the big picture and maybe not driven by who's supplying their income every year and chasing after grants here or grants there for that particular reason. So, I know we have to have a mix, but we've been given way too much attention, in my opinion, to one end of the spectrum. And that's why we're behind and we're struggling with our budgets and the school and everything else. It's because we don't have the income. We don't have the money coming in to do the things we need to do, which includes building affordable housing.
Yep, and people need to want to develop here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and people need to know there is development potential, which is what this housing person should be able to tell people. I wholeheartedly agree with you on building a bunch of less expensive housing. That you don't improve the average of the fleet by buying a whole bunch of Pintos. I know that's a dated reference, but that we need a couple of Cadillacs in the mix. Yes, we do need all of it. Unfortunately, a lot of the block grant money requires, and we need to keep in mind too that, like this Wedgwood project, a lot of the people that will, a number of the people that will go there are coming from housing that could be market rate. That if we improve the competition for some of the other landlords, they'll make improvements to fill their units. But while they've got no competition, they've got no motivation to improve. There's got to be a place for everybody to go. If there's grant money to build the affordable housing, they will move out of the better unit, the other units. And hopefully there's some trade-off there, and we can get some traction going and showing some growth, and hopefully that in turn will attract developers. And if there's a point person with the city that somebody can go to with, well, what are my options? I mean, I myself, I moved here 15 years ago. I was technically and literally bankrupt and homeless. And I happened to, luckily, ran into Tom Maynard in Codes, and he pointed out a building that actually met my needs. And I have gone from that seed to now I've got 5 buildings all on Nickel Street that are all getting well above market rate. I don't see these units as competition. In fact, I welcome them, because when I put one of my units up for rent, a 1-bedroom for $1,500, I really don't want to be inundated by all the people with the do you take a voucher, do you take a voucher, do you take a voucher. I want them to have enough units that will take a voucher, that they're not hounding me and trying to get me to drop my rate or to sign the lease and then turn around and tell me I've got a voucher and try to pull something funky, which happens. They don't succeed, but it's still more headache for me.
But the point is that it helps create there's some help in the market by adding units regardless of what kind.
Right, and these affordable units are what we can be adding. That's the point of the housing person, is to identify to other developers and to people who want to build market rate or better what's available and what help might be there. So there is a contact person.
Councilor Najin?
Just one thing that came to mind. We're a community of less than 40,000. I have a feeling if we did the census today, we'd be over 40,000, just barely. But we qualify for community development block grant funding because we partner with Auburn. And community development block grant funding has been at one point in time, I think, very much a blessing. There were certain things, the Choice Neighborhood Plan, for instance, under HUD, the way that we were able to use some of the community development block grant programming in order to get those neighborhoods rebuilt. Great. But also, we don't self-administer any programming for community development block grant funds. So we already receive the benefit. We don't give forgivable loans or low interest loans to people who are living in those particular census tracts or in that particular demographic, even outside of those census tracts, to replace their windows or redo their roofs. So therefore, like, that housing continues to deteriorate, and there's no investment on the neighborhood level. And so again, thinking about the ways we reorganize that department, if we're going to continue to be a community development block grant needs entitlement community, instead of saying we could go with different funding sources, then maybe we look at self-administering some of those programs so that the money actually goes into the housing stock that exists in those neighborhoods for people who are living in those conditions, just as a thought.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you, and thank you both for presenting. I was on the Housing Committee last year, got to know both of you, and thank you very much for your time and expertise on there. I do know that this scorecard is generally, generally negative. I do want to point out a couple positive things. It looks like people are investing in buildings that are already here, perhaps, with the permit valuation going from about 20 million to 30 million, although some of that could be, the increases in labor and material costs. And then also the rental registration data. It looks like the not occupied rental units has decreased some, which is good. I see there's a building on Pine Street right around the corner from my house that I was very glad to see. I think it started last year, being redeveloped. It had been empty the entire time I've lived here, so it's really good to see. And that's really what I wanted to highlight. I also appreciate your memo and your suggestion, and I think that would be a really good position for the city to have, and even better if we can cover it with grant funding. But yeah, just thank you for all your work and your time for doing this.
Thanks.
I'm just curious, either of the two of you know, or if Administrator O'Malley you know, does Auburn or Portland or Brunswick or Westbrook, do they have this position?
I don't know. I think that if they do, it would be helpful to take a look at what the description looks like. And even if they don't, I think it would be helpful to ask Maine Municipal if they have any thoughts. That would probably be another helpful resource.
Gotcha. Further questions or comments from the council? Councilor Harriman, yes.
I was just going to say, even if those municipalities don't have a specific person with that title, it might also be worth comparing their economic and community development departments, how many employees are in them, based on population, just to see how we compare in that way as well.
Councilor Najin, yes.
I was just going to say thank you again. Thank you for your service on the Housing Committee, and thank you for all of your insights. It's greatly appreciated.
You're welcome.
Thank you for everything you've done for us, both of you.
Thank you.
And yeah, have a wonderful evening.
Thanks.
Next up, we have School Department.
Yes, item number 1, adoption of resolve approving the fiscal year 25 budget for the Lewiston School Department. Requested action to adopt the resolve approving the fiscal year 25 budget for the Lewiston School Department.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Counselor Chittum,
Second.
seconded by Counselor Gallant. Questions, comments from the council, discussion? Counselor Chittum, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's clear that Lewiston is facing a serious problem. For the second time this year, third time in 14 years, I believe, the school budget has been rejected by the voters. It's understandable, I think, when the voters are looking at the school budget from the perspective of the cost to themselves as taxpayers. We are all looking at increased costs for gasoline, for electricity, for Campbell's soup, for homeowners insurance. It seems that the list of things that are increasing far outnumbers the list of things that are decreasing in cost. Unfortunately, it is not easy to complain to Campbell's Soup Company that the tomato soup is now 30% more than it was last year. It's not easy to go back to your insurance company and say, my homeowner's insurance has increased by 50%. It is relatively easy in a small town, which Lewiston is, to voice your displeasure at the high cost of living to your elected officials. It's easy and it's understandable. It's unfortunate, however, in my view, that the people who have the biggest insight into what is required for our schools have devoted hours and hours into studying what is necessary, what is needed by our youth, and how we as a community grow, and have all of that work with all of the nuances and all of the appreciation for the necessities in an educational system thrown away because of a perspective that this is costing me money. We are being asked tonight as a council to approve or disapprove of the most recent reduction in the school budget. My view, and I've expressed this from the outset, is that the school committee put together a budget that was necessary to meet the needs of the youth in the school system in Lewiston. When that was first rejected by the voters, I voted against the first reduction because I felt that the school budget was too low. It does not meet the needs of the students. It does not meet the needs of the community. If we are not going to support the educational system, we are going to see more people who are bereft of community, who do not understand that it's improper to discharge firearms downtown Lewiston, who do not understand and cannot avail themselves of the opportunities to grow. We are doomed to continue driving people away from the educational system if we do not provide a minimum of support and a minimum of funding for this school system. I will be voting against the reduction tonight. I realize that that's an unpopular position to take from the perspective of the taxpayers who are looking at increased costs. But let's face it, everything is going up. That's what inflation is. That's the way the economy drives. The economy will not grow if it's static. And what we are doing by forcing the school committee and the school department to cut back on its funding is reversing that trend. We are, as I said at the last meeting, effectively shooting ourselves in the foot if we don't recognize that the growth the health and the future of Lewiston depends upon adequate funding for our school systems. I will have more to say about this later, but I want to yield the floor to someone else. Thank you.
Yes, further comments or questions from the council? Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I have similar feelings as Councilor Chittum. I think that this budget is too low. Frankly, I thought the original budget was too low, but I will be voting in favor of this current iteration because we need to keep the process moving and see if this, if this budget is acceptable at the ballot box. I don't really know where we're going to go if it is voted down, but that's, I'm supporting this current budget, even though I don't like the reductions, just as a pragmatic move to keep the process moving.
Councilor Gallant.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm withholding how I'm going to vote at this time. I like suspense. I do believe the budget's too low in order to support our community and our students. I felt that right from the beginning, and I still feel that today. I'm not so sure with the current budget's been presented to me that all the right cuts have been made in the right areas. That's probably my biggest concern with the process that's going on here. Unlike Councilman Harriman, I don't think necessarily throwing it back out to the voters to decide is the right decision either. I think it should be more thought. I think sometimes we rush into things to make a problem go away, and it doesn't fix a problem. It just moves it down the road like kicking a can. So, I'm hoping as I think and sit here tonight and work on my decision on which way I'm going to go in, and I hope that people in my ward, Ward 7, understand. My thoughts are for our children and our future. I feel bad about paying more taxes, as everyone does. I'm a retiree on a fixed income, so it's definitely going to affect me and my family. But at the same time, I need to have people, as we heard earlier about housing, who will be smart enough to go out and get good-paying jobs and live here in Lewiston and help raise up things so we have more income and more business want to come. It's kind of a catch-22, isn't it? We take it away and we don't have bright children who can go out and do things, or we go ahead and go like it is, and then we complain about the other status quo, right? How come nobody around here wants to build market housing, or how come affordable housing's okay? So I'm going to hold my vote at this point till it's my turn, but I still believe the budget was too low, and if I have to live with this number, I would have to see some changes in some of the decisions that were made. Thank you.
Councilor Sol.
So I wrote down some of my thoughts because, well, I'm just not a very good speaker, and I usually forget what I'm going to say. So I'm just going to read this for you, if you don't mind. So, this entire budget process has weighed very heavily on me. It hasn't been easy, and I have definitely learned a few hard lessons. After the first proposed budget failed, we all had a fairly unique opportunity to do better. I want to do better. On June 11th, only 9% of the citizens came out to vote, and roughly 5% of them said it was too high. As important as the number amount is, where the funds are being appropriated should be just as important. So where do we go from here? What is an acceptable school budget? One the entire city can afford, regardless of the impact on our students. I don't think that is the answer. I don't know what the answer is. However, we appear to be falling back. We appear to be falling back rather than moving forward. I realize the job of any school committee is to provide our kids with the best education they can, and to reduce the budget, cutting programs, or releasing teachers goes against everything they are trying to accomplish. After 2 failed attempts, we need to really explore what is being paid for. Is it necessary? Is it benefiting the students and or the staff? There's no doubt in my mind that coaches, DEI, SAL are beneficial to both. But when we can't afford to have additionals and much needed have additionals, I don't know where I was going with that, I'm sorry, have additional costs in much-needed RSO, or bring our special need kids home, those programs should be considered when looking at additional cuts, not our after-school programs, or especially not our sports. I do not believe that this is going to pass if it goes to referendum, and I will be voting no.
Further comments from the council? Yes, Councilor Chittum.
Thank you. One of the difficulties is that the voters are asked in a secondary question as to whether they believe the school budget is too high, just right, or too low. There is no connection between approving the budget and the rationale or the reasons for approving that budget. I have run into people like myself who would vote against the budget because it is too low. There needs to be a mechanism by which we can actually gauge the sentiment of the voters, because right now we're shooting at a moving target with blindfolds on. The school committee doesn't really know where it's supposed to end up. That's the problem I have with the way that the questions are worded. We can get much more detailed information and more instruction from the voters if they were allowed to say, I'm voting against this budget because it is too low. And there are people out there who feel that way. What is acceptable? We don't know. Every time a number goes to the public, this year it's been rejected. Is it because it's going down, 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 and they want to see it go lower? There was an email I received recently from an individual who said, if the taxpayer is not willing to fund an extra $42 a month for education, is that taxpayer going to be willing to spend $32 a month extra for education? 22. Where is the target? No one seems to know. If the council approves this budget tonight, it will be going to public referendum. We don't know what the public is going to say. If the public says no, it goes back to the school committee. If the council rejects this budget tonight, it gives the school committee an earlier option to evaluate some of the questions that will be raised and have been raised so far tonight. I have been advised that going into July 1st with no resolution on the budget means that the superintendent is forced to spend as little money as possible because he doesn't know what the final budget is going to be. The budget, in effect, will be the last budget approved by the school committee, which is the one that we're considering tonight. Is that budget going to be further reduced, or is it going to be increased? We don't know. One of the reasons to vote against this budget tonight is that it gives the school committee an earlier opportunity to evaluate where they want to go. What are the cuts being made in the proper place? There's been a lot of talk about using greater amounts of the fund balance to reduce the burden on the taxpayers while not eliminating necessary positions, programs, and activities. So again, there is another reason for my counselors, my fellow counselors, to say, let's give the school committee another chance tonight to go back and look at the way that these monies are being apportioned. Not necessarily reducing it, but changing the funding mechanisms. Thank you.
Councilor Najin.
I'm just wondering, Jake, are you going to present it all? No. One of the questions that I had specifically was, with the new budget arrangement, you can't ask a question?
Yeah, no, sorry, if I may. Yeah, I mean, if we have questions, the school committee is here to, or sorry, the school committee, school administration is here to answer them. So, yeah. Jake, do you mind coming up? Please continue, Councilor Najin.
So, from my understanding, the ask is actually lower a lower amount to the mill rate than it was last year. Am I correct on that?
That's correct. The new ask is $1.16. Last year was $1.20.
So it's $1.16. Last year was $1.20, and with the additional county and municipal revenues, I believe it's under 6%, whereas last year's overall mill rate increase, I believe, was 5.28%. And there was a large amount of fund balance that was used to balance the municipal side of the budget last year. I guess the one question that I have is, and I know that there are a lot of cuts that you had spoken to and went through. If this iteration doesn't pass, what is the next step? That's what I need to know.
The next step, if this doesn't pass, will be incredibly challenging in that we'll be faced with having to figure out what we freeze. And so when people talk about things that are not cut in here that could be, if there's another round, not knowing what that final number would be to be approved, we're faced with the challenge of trying to reduce other costs immediately. Because if, let's say it goes another month and then budgets are approved, or if it goes 2 months, once we get back into school, summer is appropriated for it, but once we get back into school, any programming outside of the school day, I think, is at risk, because I just don't know what kind of money we have. So we can't run programs and pay for them along the way if ultimately the budget that gets approved down the road doesn't have the funds in it to support those activities. So it'll force a hand either way. So if the budget's approved, we would move forward with the things we have. I think the committee would be happy to take input on other budget adjustments if that's the will of the council. The school committee could make certain tweaks after the budget is approved. But yeah, if we don't have a budget, I have to act like it's going to be much less than it is. And to stay in the black, we would have to freeze things.
One of the things that stood out as well is that, so this past year, I believe the appropriations from the state was $68 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
And now even though there are still pieces that aren't fully funded by the state, the appropriation, the state match is $85 million. Is that correct?
So this year we have total from the state for local is $72 million, and then adult education has $310,000.
Okay, 72 and then 310,000, and then next year is the 85 million. Is that correct?
Next year?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm just noticing in the paperwork here, it specifically mentions the 85 million.
Oh, we won't know the EPS formulation until that comes out. Usually at end of January, early February.
Okay. Those are really the questions I had. Thank you.
Further comments from the council before we head to public comment? We're now heading public comment for this agenda item.
I'm in.
You're first up.
How you doing? Well, hello, Mayor and councilors. We appreciate you being here tonight and all you do. I'm here to talk about the budget cuts a little bit.
If you can identify yourself and tell us where you live.
Sure. My name's Steve Morgan. I live at 260 South Avenue, Ward 7. Mr. Gallant is my counselor. And it's tough. I've sat in Mr. Gallant's seat for Ward 7 back about 8 or 10 years ago, and I've gone through the line items, line by line by line, and seen all the cost. And you can't cut the money going to the police department or the fire department because, God, you need them. And you can't, when the Sabata Street sewer blows up on January 13th and somebody's out there at 3 o'clock in the morning fixing the broken sewer, you need them. There's a lot of things you really need, but you got to turn around and go back and look at those line items more and cut where you need to, and then also raise some taxes. I'm telling you right now, you can raise my taxes. I'm okay with that. I've heard talk of $1 million school budget cut. Now, I've heard talk of up to $3 million in school budget cuts, and we've gone twice and and going to be voting on it again. I've sold real estate in this area for 36 years. I am many times, and all the other realtors in this area, I'm many times the first point of contact to a new person thinking about coming in, moving into Lewiston. One of the first questions they always ask is, how's the school systems? And I say, oh, they're mid to average. No, I don't say that, but that's what we're going to have if we keep cutting the school budget. If you want to bring in, and my feeling is that good schools will bring more people into the community, and it'll be a plus for all of us. More people into the community means more businesses will come to the community, and thus more people, more business, more tax revenue will come to the community. And what will that do? It'll reduce our taxes. So if we need to right now increase tax base to make it work for a little bit, and I know there's a lot of elderly people out there on fixed incomes that are struggling, and they're sitting there and pointing their finger at me. I won't tell you which finger, but they're pointing it at me right now on the TV, and they're saying, you know, what's he talking about? He doesn't understand. I do understand. But I think sometimes you've got to take, you've got to sit back and regroup and
That's
say,
time.
this-
Thank you.
Oh, it was a pleasure talking to you all.
Thank you.
And while the next person comes up, if anyone had anything further to say, they're always welcome to email the council at publiccomment@lewistonmaine.gov.
Hi, my name is Kennedy Raymond. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Connors here in Lewiston, and I'm here again to urge you to pass the school budget.
Mr. Mayor, could we please identify where the speaker is from?
I live in New Gloucester. I'm a teacher here in Lewiston. As we continue to see unprecedented cuts in our district, uneasiness continues to build as I consider what our schools will look like in the fall as a result of this process. Public education is the backbone of functioning society. There's been a lot of discussion about our schools in Lewiston and whether or not they deserve the resources they currently have in place. Many of those opposed to this budget are quick to cite how our schools are failing our students. I want to push back on that narrative and say that our schools are doing everything they can to support our students to achieving their full potential. Our Lewiston students are incredible. They are talented in so many ways. Each year, I have incredible artists, athletes, mathematicians, readers, writers, and scientists walk through my classroom doors. They also need so much to achieve their full potential. They need access to social workers and counselors. They need interventions to support their academic growth. They need a teacher who continues to grow their craft through instructional cycles with coaches. They need access to transportation and nutrition. They need smaller classes and differentiated instruction. I could go on, but in the short term, they need this budget to pass. We have already made critical cuts that I anticipate we will see lasting impacts from. We cannot afford to continue to see cuts in our district. While I appreciate the concerns and sentiments from the committee of the budget being too low, at this point in the process, I urge you to pass this budget as presented tonight.
Hi, my name is Jay Rich, and I am a resident of Auburn, and I am a teacher of multilingual students at McMahon Elementary and the president of the Lewiston Education Association. I, along with many educators who are spending their summer break at city council and school committee meetings, I'm here in support of the school budget. I must begin this evening by addressing a serious concern. The LEA was horrified when personal information about the superintendent and his family were shared on social media. This is unacceptable behavior, and moving forward, we urge everyone to conduct themselves with civility and responsibility, and remember, our kids are watching. The budget process has highlighted an inequity of the state and federal funding for education. While the aim for securing 55% state funding for public schools was to alleviate the financial strain on local taxpayers, it has become evident that this is insufficient. We need a comprehensive analysis of the existing education funding model to make public schools in Maine more equitably funded. Additional cuts to our budget, to our Lewiston budget, will have devastating effects on our school and on our children. And I'm not trying to use a scare tactic here, but I am trying to be blunt with taxpayers. Lewiston Public Schools has made over $5 million in cuts, leaving schools without vital resources. And when we don't have what we need, educators end up footing the bill and begging parents to supply their classrooms. And as we heard earlier in a very timely Housing Committee report, the cost of living, including housing, food, utilities, gas, continues to rise at an alarming rate, outpacing the average working salary. Families are struggling, and our education system should not be another casualty of this economic strain. So I call upon lawmakers to develop creative, equitable solutions for funding public schools in Maine. Our students deserve a high-quality education, and our educators deserve safe and equitable working conditions. We still have a responsibility to ensure that Lewiston students receive free, accessible public education. So I ask the council, although this budget is low, please vote yes. I am not confident that we could save more jobs if this budget was to be sent back to the school committee. I fear we will lose more jobs, we will lose more supplies. I also fear that we will lose really good teachers and staff who will find employment elsewhere because they're fearful they won't have a job in August. Passing this budget is a step towards ensuring that our schools receive the support they need. By voting yes on this budget, we are sending a clear message. We value education, we value the children's future, and we are committed to finding equitable and sustainable solutions. When we invest in our schools, property values improve, and new developers and businesses are attracted to our city, furthering the tax base. A fully funded education system reaches far beyond the classroom. So please vote yes for our kids, and please vote yes for Lewiston. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hawa Abdel. I live in Ward 1. I'm a former employee for Lewiston Public Schools, and I'm also proud to say that I'm an alumni of Lewiston High School. As I stand today, normally I don't like to speak in public, but this is a very important issue for me that I'm encouraging you guys to vote yes on the budget. Lewiston, as hard as it is for our teachers, sometimes come here and get their stepping stone, and when they go elsewhere, they get better pay. Cutting school, a lot of the positions that are more valuable for our students, you heard in Lewiston. I encourage you guys, we voted for you guys, I encourage you guys to vote this. This cannot keep going back and forth. I think it's embarrassing to Lewiston, embarrassing to the nationwide, we're hearing that our budgets are being passed around. We are a taxpayer in Lewiston, but our kids are our future. So I encourage you guys to please vote so that we don't have to come back again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. My name is Nicole Pendexter. I'm a teacher at Lewiston Middle School, and I'm here tonight to urge you to pass this version of the school budget.
I'm sorry,
Also
one second.
a resident of
Excuse
Auburn.
me. Excuse me. Sorry, where do you live?
I teach at Lewiston Middle School, and I am a resident of Auburn. 20 years ago, when my husband and I decided to where we were going to get our home, I grew up in Auburn. I went through the Auburn schools. I graduated in 1991 Everett Little High School. I loved the Lewiston schools, and I chose to have my career be here. I first started in Minot, and I chose to follow a colleague here in Lewiston. We couldn't find housing that was affordable for us, and when we bought our house 20 years ago, it ended up being in Auburn. But I love my students here. I've taught here since 1999, and I don't see myself wanting to leave. I love Lewiston. This is my home and my community. I'm here tonight to urge you to pass this version of the school budget. I am very concerned that if it does not go to voters and it does not get passed, that we are looking at more severe cuts. And we need a budget to be able to educate our students and to be able to fund our schools. I'm really, really concerned that if we don't have it. I completely went off my script for what I had from what I was writing tonight because I'm very passionate about it. Over the week following the last city council meeting, I've read a lot of social media posts urging counselors and citizens to vote no. One reason stated was that instructional coaches can be cut from the budget if it goes back to school committee. At the last school committee meeting, the school committee members learned the many ways instructional coaches directly impact the success of students within our schools. They learned how the work with the instructional coaches directly improves every student's education in each of the schools and every year that follows where these instructional coaches serve, not just the individual educational personnel who work with the coaches. I couldn't imagine sports team coaches being cut and the teams continuing to function or even improve. Speaking of sports teams, I do fear that the sports and other extracurriculars will be cut in the next round if this budget does not get approved by the councils and the voters. We have many students that are motivated and do well academically and exhibit productive habits of work because of those extracurriculars. We have educators that are more effective, able to meet the educational, social, and emotional needs of our students because of the instructional coaches. I thank you for listening and understanding. Please vote yes for our students in this current proposed school budget.
If I can remind speakers to please identify yourself and the city where you live.
My name is Krista St. Cyr, and I'm a resident of Naples. I'm the Lewiston Education Association Vice President. I've been an LPS educator for 10 years, and I'm a multilingual learning instructional coach. I'm speaking tonight to urge you to approve this version of the school budget. It is crucial for the students of Lewiston. Our district cannot endure more budget cuts. The reductions already made will negatively impact our students, limiting resources and opportunities that are essential for growth and success. Further cuts would be absolutely detrimental, hindering the potential of our students and compromising the quality of their education. Some members of our community have been advocating for instructional coaches to be cut from the budget and for those coaches to replace uncertified teachers. There are simply nowhere near enough coaches for this, and it would leave too many teachers without necessary support. Coaching is differentiated professional development. The work done with coaches directly aligns to teachers' needs and the needs of their students. The strategies and practices that teachers learn and apply through coaching not only benefit the students they currently teach, but also every single future student they will have throughout their careers. I urge all of you to understand the gravity of this vote and to stand with our teachers, staff, and most importantly, our students. By voting in favor of the school budget, we are investing in a brighter future for our children and for our community. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Poulin, and I live in Auburn.
Do you mind just speaking into the mic for our audience at home? Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Stephanie Poulin, and I live in Auburn. And I am a general education social worker at Montello Elementary School and have been in this role for over a decade. At the last round of budget cut considerations, 2 general education positions were being considered to be eliminated and simply moved into other vacant clinical roles. Eliminating any of our roles in the schools we are currently in would leave that school without the needed support we provide. The result would contribute to widening the barriers to educational equity, moving us further away from equity in education and closer to modern-day segregation. Since we as a district emphasize the importance of equity in education, we must not lose sight of why this is so important in our school district and how we as general education social workers are imperative to this narrative. We work with the entire student and staff population on a variety of levels. General education social workers all have a clinical license and are trained in providing comprehensive support and services addressing barriers impacting the social, emotional, academic, and physical needs of all of our students. Our services include assessments and screenings, individual counseling and group work, crisis intervention to include risk assessments, and creating safety plans when needed. We conduct many suicide risk assessments, and many have led to crisis stabilization and/or hospitalization. I have done more suicide risk assessments than I can count this year, and often these comprehensive assessments take 3 hours from start to finish. I work with students in grades 4 to 6 So this should give you an indication of how serious our students' social and emotional needs are. We also provide training and education to administrators and school personnel related to the whole child, including, but not limited to, behavior and classroom management, mental health, child abuse, and neglect, and other crises. The needs of our students are varied, and many are experiencing trauma, mental health issues, violence, food insecurity, homelessness, discrimination, chronic absenteeism, and truancy issues. We provide a pathway to healing and are able to address the diverse needs of our students due to our specific training. Lastly, general education social workers ensure equitable access to services for all students and families, increasing student success in school. Our work also improves school climate, culture, and safety. It would seem reckless to expect our district to make any further cuts. Let us not forget what John F. Kennedy said, quote.
That's time, thank you.
Can I just do the quote? It's the end.
Please finish your quote.
Thank you. Thank you. Children are the world's most valuable resource and its best hope for the future. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Deanna Earhart. I live in Lewiston on Highland Avenue, and I'm one of the 2 Dean of Students at Lewiston Middle School. Honestly, I didn't even have anything prepared for tonight. You know, as one of the 2 deans, this is a new position. We just finished up our 2nd year with these positions. It's just a strong example of what having a logical and reasonable budget can do to help out a school. We've seen such an improvement with just the safety issues and the overall well-being of our students and staff at the middle school. I'm going to speak to the middle school because that's where I'm at. And, you know, honestly, it just breaks my heart to see that our city won't pass our budget to help our kids. And you can tell I'm pretty passionate about this. I've been in Lewiston as an educator since 2018, and our kids are amazing, and they deserve so much more than what our voters are giving us. But at this point, we need to go forward with what's been presented. I sat at that last meeting at the Green Ladle while we tried to wring our hands over how to cut more money out of something that there's nothing to cut out of, and this is what we proposed. We cannot afford to lose one more staff member, just not one more. You know, it's bad enough that we're cutting books and paper and everything else, but we need the human contact. We need the human resources, and that's where the most impact is for our kids, no matter what. It's all about the relationships that we build with our kids and how we pour into them, but also how we pour into each other as adults. So all I can do is just implore you to pass this so we can get on to the next thing as the educators in Lewiston, and that is to educate the public so they can get out and vote and get this going so that our district can do what it needs to do and support its staff. Thank you.
Jamie Cowett, born and raised right here in Lewiston. I've been in the school system for 16 years. I also didn't prepare to speak, but I feel like I need to. I am petrified as a parent. I have a son that is 15 years old, and I took in another 16-year-old, his best friend. So I have 2 high school boys that are living in my house, and then I am a mother to many high school students and other kids in the school that I take care of that are homeless, and these cuts are devastating and scare me, and they scare me in my program that I run. They scare me with the mental health that we have in our schools. I am worried about our kids and how they will suffer in our schools. Our teachers are so dedicated to our students They are the trusted individuals that some of these students don't have parents in their home or people to go to, and these kids go to those trusted individuals, if it's a teacher, if it is a coach, a secretary, because they don't have those supports in home. And the more we cut and take away from these kids that don't have anybody, this scares me, somebody who works in the mental health field. If you keep on removing all these supports from these kids, I worry about what's going to happen. It's going to crumble, and this is our future. We're talking about our future that we're just taking away from, and it scares me. It scares me as a parent. I'm also a taxpayer, and I work in the school, so I'm getting a double whammy of everything. So I'm very scared. Thank you.
My name is Megan Parks, Ward 7 and the chair of the Lewiston School Committee. The narrative that has been pushed lately has been that all of the no votes are because further cuts are wanted by the public. I'm encouraging people to vote yes on this budget, despite how deep these cuts are. But regardless of how you vote, please complete the bottom section on the ballot regarding if the budget is too high or too low, so that we as the committee have some accurate data so that we can proceed moving forward. Because I've been receiving a lot of feedback that people who have voted yes the first 2 times are now considering voting no because the budget has been cut too much. And so I don't want, if this fails, which I hope it doesn't, I don't want it to come back to us with the idea that we need to cut more if that's not what people want. I'd also like to share a reminder that the City Council and the voters are voting on a final dollar amount, not on specific causes. There seems to be a specific population that is voting the budget down because they have sort of pet projects or political or personal agendas where they want to cut coaches, or they want to cut the store next door, or they want to cut sports. And that's not what we're here for. We're here to vote on a dollar amount and not on specific areas that somebody might disagree with. The fund balance for Lewiston Public Schools was maintained between $1 and $2 million for years, and the school district survived appropriately on that. I've recommended multiple times with much resistance that we use a little bit more of the remaining $5 million in fund balance right now. We are proposing a special ed adjustment that is predicted to bring back $1 to $3 million in savings in the first year alone. If we are going to be saving that much, we shouldn't have to worry about the financial cliff that some people are afraid of. Since our last meeting, I have been criticized for allowing teachers and staff, so many teachers and staff, to share their experiences and perspectives and take up so much of our time at our last meeting. At our inauguration in January, when I gave my speech as the chair, I stated at that time, and I still believe now, that we are here to make these decisions, but we are not the experts. We need to hear from our teachers and our staff that are doing this work on the front lines daily, because they are the experts. And if any of us think that we know better than them, we shouldn't be in the roles that we are in. We are not the experts who are doing the work daily. Our educators are, and we need to listen to them. Thank you.
Good evening, Andrew Jones, Ward 2. One reason I wanted to come out and speak tonight was to address comments that have been made by the Ward 6 and Ward 7 councilors. I need to remind you that your wards voted the budget down, and they also said it was too high. So if you're going to cast a vote against this budget, I hope it's for the right reasons, and I question who you're representing. Furthermore, there are 2 councilors up there who have not spoken tonight about the budget. I sincerely hope we hear from you before you cast your vote. Thank you.
Matthew Egren, Ward 4. I'm not going to say the school fails. My kid, 2 years ago, dear God, was it only 2 years ago, got into 5 of the 6 schools he applied to, including his dream school out of state. It came with this a beautiful scholarship. And if we had tried to pay for him to go there, I wouldn't own a house, a car, clothes, a computer, anything. He sat down one night, did a budget, figured out that he didn't want to go in debt enough that could buy him a house. So he decided he could be happy with a program at UMaine. He and I and my wife, we prioritized his education's cost. The city of Lewiston is now in the same place we were 2 years ago. We need to prioritize our expenses on this budget. I'm not sure it will pass. There are multiple reasons. I think maybe there are places we could make better cuts, because most of what we've done for cuts have been moving from the fund balance, which is money we gave the school early, and they just didn't use it. I would, and a number of other people would like to also see what a 5 or 10-year view for the school planning system is. I know we're bringing back the special ed kids. That's a big part of our long-range plan, but we also all know that the CDS is coming. It's going to become ours, not the state's. How is the school looking at taking over that? And the staffing issues between CDS and our special ed program. Because let's face it, with those two costs right there, this is only the beginning of large increases to our school budget that our tax base just isn't there to support. We need to plan ahead to have support in place for these actions. Thank you very much.
Matt Roy, Ward 3. Let's start with the first point that Mr. Mayor, that the superintendent alluded to. Regardless, let's say the quiet part first. Regardless what you guys do tonight, this budget is going to be the de facto budget come Monday under state law. Second of all, you're not going to improve the 5-year 67% when you take out professional development. Would we tell Chief St. Pierre that he couldn't send his new officers, the 3 that we're going to be hiring in the next fiscal year, to Vassarboro for their weeks of training, which is required? We wouldn't tell Chef Karen any new firefighters he hires can't get trained. There's an inconsistency in apparently the public's approach to this. Again, of course, if we call the public uneducated, that causes issues, but as one of the 2 people in this room that actually has years of experience between county budgeting, the school department's budget, Chairman Park's point is correct about that 1.5 to 2 million. But the part she doesn't have the personal memory of is that 2014, 2015, with all the issues with Maine Seed through the state. And again, frankly, I feel this current school committee doesn't actually understand what fund balance is. Granted, that most of that is because the extra funding between the feds, the state, the 60 positions we didn't fill last year is bloated that. We've known for a few years that this fiscal year was going to be an issue. With now at a fund balance under $5 million, depending on what happens in the next year, we're going to be in our worst position next year. And again, as Mr. Agron points out, that any projected savings we're going to get from moving those students in the special placement, special education schools, that's that 1 to 1.2 million, that's going to evaporate. Because currently CDS has 1 speech therapist for the district. Not our school district, but the district they serve, which is essentially the same as our DA district, so the Tri-County area. And that's even before you get to full implementation of the paid family medical leave that the state has, especially with the affinity rule as proposed currently by the Department of Labor, which is going through public comment, which is essentially as written now. So anyone that you know that you have a family-like relationship with can use your benefit.
That's time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Further public comment?
My name is David Rackmills. I live at 20 Walker Avenue in Ward 1. I prepared some comments, but I'll send them to the public comment email. I just wanted to touch on a couple of issues because Megan Parks made a comment that reminded me of something that the outgoing Housing Committee Chairman also spoke to, which is the lack of expertise. And it's very hard for part-time committee members, part-time counselors to actually fulfill their responsibilities and oversight and accountability when they don't have the expertise in these systems. The regulatory and financial aspects of our school systems are mind-bogglingly complex. So I would just suggest that maybe the operating principle is trust but verify, whatever that looks like. And just as a final comment, I'll say that in every crisis there's an opportunity. Don't let this opportunity slip away.
Further public comment? Back to the council. I appreciate everyone speaking tonight, no matter where our educators live. They're valuable employees of our city, and I appreciate the contributions that make to our school department every day. So thank you. Councillor Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say thank you to everybody that came out and to support voting yes on this budget. Myself, I will pass this budget along tonight. When I was running for city council, I did run on education. That was one of the big points that I wanted to. And I, myself, as a person, I voted for the budget. I said it was personally too low. However, you know, I got voted in by constituents who share some concerns. And I've heard a lot of concerns. But I will be voting to pass this on tonight, and I will be voting yes at the ballot box also. Thank you.
Councillor Longchamps.
Good evening, everyone. I wish the first round would have went through. I'm concerned. I don't know that this one will. One of my concerns is how much is being taken from fund balance. So I'm going to hold my vote, but I just wanted to at least share that. I am concerned about the fund balance.
Councillor Najin.
I'd just like to point out that this is a bit of a perfect storm. We have, I'm not quite sure the number of substitutes teachers in our school system, but I know it's high. And I know it's high because it's difficult to find qualified teachers, especially at the pay that we pay. There is not existing housing in our community for workforce, which means that if you're somebody who's driving in from Livermore, from Jay, from New Gloucester, from Lisbon, from wherever it is that you can find your home, you don't have a work-life balance, which means that you can't continue to educate yourself in order to pull down that degree while you're being employed. Just going through a 4-year school system, education carries a cost. People end up leaving the school systems with a burden in the form of student loans. And so when we criticize the school system for not having qualified teachers, the entire system is set up in such a way that it's incredibly difficult to have qualified teachers. And the folks that are doing the work are doing it well. And so I just want to illustrate just how broken this all is. And so, you know, we should have workforce housing that people can actually afford, that two people who are working full time in our community can afford to pay a mortgage on. That money should be going to our tax base. We have the second largest school system and growing in the state. I have friends who have worked at the LPS from Portland, from Falmouth, from other places in times before COVID. They were traveling all the way up here for those jobs. Now, because of the split between the charter and private educational schools, it's much easier to get paid more and travel less. And so I just hope that the the third time is a charm. I'm not going to personally make you all bring it back to the school committee table to push things around in order to get down to the 5.27%. If it doesn't pass, we'll have to do it again. But I do think that my ward clearly supported this budget the last time. I'm hoping that they'll come out and vote to support this budget, even if they're upset that it's lower. And again, I do know that there are people in my ward who cannot afford this budget, cannot afford any increase at all, and that is not the school system's problem. That's a municipal problem that we do need to deal with. So, thank you.
Councillor Harriman.
Thank you. So first, I just wanted to push back on a point that was raised, and I keep hearing it repeated over and over, that that the cuts that have been made have been mostly just moving money from fund balance. And Jake, I don't know if you have, or Superintendent Langlis, I don't know if you have this right in front of you, but we cut approximately $3 million before it went to referendum. We have cut approximately $3 million more since the May referendum vote, and I believe only 1.1 million of that is from the fund balance, but I'm not completely sure about that.
Yeah, the 1.1 that was just approved recently at the school committee, excuse me, that's the fund balance that was added in. We started our budget with a $4 million fund balance with the attempt to use a little less this year. When we had, 5 to keep it the same, and then we had the insurance rates, they come in April. It's just the way the process works. When those came in, we took what was a savings, which isn't always, we took that from the fund balance to reduce the use of it in that way, and then added the 1.1.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to correct the record that the cuts that have been made have been a majority of positions, supplies, other things like that. And I'm just concerned for the future of our schools if we cut over 60 positions last year. We're cutting, I believe we're somewhere in the 30s now with this current iteration, but our school system is growing. So I just don't see how we can keep cutting teachers and other staff members while also having more students. It just doesn't make sense. So I'm going to be voting yes on this tonight, and I urge everybody to come out and vote yes as well on July 9th. And hopefully this passes this time. Thank you.
I encourage, and thank you for being here again, Superintendent Langlis. Thank you all, administration, teachers, for being here. I encourage counselors to vote this through unanimously. I'm concerned that a mixed vote is going to send a mixed message to voters, and we need to get a budget passed so that way our school can plan, our teachers can plan, and we can move this forward. Councillor Chittum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there was a common theme that I heard from the people who spoke this evening, it is that to quote Krista St. Peter, the budget is already adversely affecting the school system. I've heard the theme, the budgets are too low, please approve them. That doesn't make any sense to me. I agree the budget is too low. It does not meet the minimum needs of the Lewiston school system. Thank you.
Councillor Glant.
Thank you, Mayor. Someone said, well, my ward voted it down. I don't disagree with that. And I've had many from my ward tell me that it's not high enough. The bottom line is education is the foundation of what our country was built on. Without a decent education, we're not going to have a country. We're not going to have anything. So Lewiston will have nothing. And I don't believe in kicking anything down the road, kicking a can down the road, quite frankly. Because enough people have already said is, well, it may not pass. Well, what are we going to do? It may not pass. I'd rather give it back to everyone and have another conversation on what we need to do to fix it. And I don't mean by cutting more money. maybe some of the things we're cutting just aren't the right items, and maybe we need to really look at some of the positions and think along that line. I'm sorely upset that we're taking an SRO out of the budget. I believe an SRO is 10 times more valuable than any coach sitting out there in the audience or in the school district, quite frankly, for how they interface and what they do with our students. I know you all educate with them, but it's a different process along that situation. I watched the school committee meeting, and for those who don't know, my wife is on the school committee, and she did vote for this budget to come to our table. So to say we are in agreement 100% would not be true. But I see a red audience of red individuals that look pretty stacked to me and pretty intimidating for school council members. Quite frankly, I'm disappointed with the fact that people think that maybe we're not educated. So for the record, I worked in a school district for 6 years, SAD 43 in Rumford, Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Director, done tons of budgets, seen plenty of cuts, and seen plenty of revotes. So before you think that we aren't qualified to make these decisions or know what's going on, do your homework. I don't believe this budget's high enough. Do I think we're going to get raised up if we send it back to the school district? Probably not. But I think we need to relook at what positions are being taken, what programs are being dropped, and what's going on further than what we have. I see no administrators in this budget being cut. We have some not filled. I don't see very many coaches being cut in this process, while we have teachers who are uncertified. And as I look through the list which I received today and haven't had a lot of chance to look over, I find it difficult when I check with other school districts in our area, they don't even have coaches. I had one of them say, "What do you mean coaches?" I said, "Don't you have somebody go around helping other teachers do this, this, and this?" Got to get a little chuckle out of that. So I'm not so sure of the value in that area. And I'm not saying that all coaches aren't valuable and that we don't need any. I'm just wondering if how many do we need and at what level we need them to do and what their job is actually. We had some teachers talk about how they've helped them. I think that's great. First year teachers need that. And we are now hiring individuals who just have any kind of degree, right? Hate to say this, basket weaving, right? Somebody who does anthropology can now be an English teacher because we need teachers who have a college degree. And do they need coaches or peers to help them? Yes, I believe that. But unfortunately, do we need one in every department and every school in the same thing? Every Wednesday in this district, we provide training. Every Wednesday, we send kids home so teachers can train and cross-train and do things. That's by knowledge, by thought anyways, based on school getting out early. I don't know what they do on Wednesdays. Perhaps the superintendent might share that with us, but you know, that's the time you do some cross-training.
If the audience can please be quiet, thank you. Please continue, Councilor Gallant.
So my opinion is, and so you know, I said I withhold my vote, I'm a no. I think it needs to go back to the school committee and have a good conversation about things that we need to do, we can do in other areas, and I'm not looking for you to make it less than 1.7. I would like to see it 1, I'm not gonna lie, but come back at 1.7, show me some beef. Show me some reason we're taking some things out of different areas other than things that we need, based on my opinion, I guess. Thank you.
Superintendent Langlis, for clarification purposes, it's been mentioned that an SRO position has been cut. Was that a filled or unfilled position?
That was actually proposed new. It wasn't vacant or filled. It was proposed new. Didn't exist before. We have 3 remaining at this time in the proposed budget.
And just to be clear, no SROs losing their job in this current budget?
Correct.
Thank you. Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to mention the same thing. Yeah, the SRO position that was reduced was a new one that was proposed. So there's, it's not that a vacant position was cut. A filled position wasn't cut either. It was a proposed new that was reduced. Also, the if we were to cut instructional coaches because we have teachers working on a waiver or a conditional basis, if we want that coach to move into that position, then that means that teacher no longer has a position. So it just doesn't seem to make any sense if you have, let's say 50 people and you reduce the number by shifting the positions around, it's still fewer people who are teaching our kids and interacting with them in our school system. And then the last point I wanted to make is that, just a reminder, the city council approves the bottom line budget for the schools. It's not the city council's position to say, I want to take this out, I want to take this out, I want to add this in. That's the school committee's job. All that we do here is we vote yes or no on the bottom line, and that's what our task is tonight.
Councillor Gallant.
I didn't say we were eliminating one, we're adding one that's much needed. And to your point of coaches becoming teachers and someone losing a job, well, that reduces the budget, okay? So, I mean, that's math. If there's 29 coaches, if the information correctly was given to me, and half of them become teachers, maybe the 15 positions that are lost come off that bottom line at that 1.7 million. Because if they don't, they're just an add-on. They're frosting on a cake. And it's needed. Who wants to eat a cake without frosting? But we have to make some tough decisions. And if we're not going to make these decisions, why do they come and present to us? Why do they ask us questions? So I disagree with you saying we don't get to make a decision. They come here and say, what do you think? We're going to sit here and just say, I don't know? That's why they come. We do have a right to say. And that's why we give them our inputs. They don't always follow them, but we do have that right.
Councillor Najin.
Just for a point of clarity, there's currently 5,600 students in the system. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's 5665, I think, last I looked.
So we have an SRO at the middle school, one at the high school, and one that floats between all of the elementary schools, but primarily stays at Connors. Is that correct?
Correct.
And population at Connors right now?
I'd have to look, but 680.
680. It was like 666 at the beginning of last year, and we know that it's the largest, quickest growing elementary school. All of the coaches are on teaching contracts, correct?
Yes.
And in several cases, those coaches do actually end up taking over classes.
They cover classes quite a lot. They run professional development, some of those Wednesdays that was talked about, and work in and around classrooms, teachers. They also do interventions with small groups of students directly. So it's not just someone walking around trying to help people in teaching and learning. They're doing teaching and learning all over the place.
Okay. One thing that I mentioned it before the vote on the second go around, but the Wednesdays, developmental days, if there's some type of way looking forward to work around some stability in scheduling so that those kids don't just get released, I think it would be very helpful. It doesn't mean that they have to stay at the school, but I think that you could have the after hours mentorship. You could have different groups in the community filling in. Some of the older kids, I think, volunteer hours, all kinds of different things that you can do that still keep a structured environment for the kids, and also keep the kids from just being released when the parents are at work. It's something I just have to bring up because it's a challenge for people who work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
I just add that.
Yes, please continue, Superintendent.
So we can definitely try to look at that. Some of that is collectively bargained, so it may take some time. But when we go into this work, the goal is to improve what we do, to create growth in students and improve the outcomes, which we all have said improves our community, our economic factors, you name it. But that's what coaches do. They help us do it better. It helps people improve their craft in their classroom. It helps kids who struggle to read or do math or other components in the interventions that they do. They also help cover things when we're short, which between new family medical leave things coming down the pipeline and the things that already exist, this is a real need. And so if we're committed to getting better, even in tight economic times or in tight budgets, we have to keep our eyes on that. And so that's why I don't sit before you and say, cut all these coaches. It's because that is a key component to us improving. We need to improve, we want to improve, and that is part of the structure of how we do it. And so I will forever advocate for it And I'm not saying that it'll last through all these budgets, but I will forever advocate for it because I know what it does, and I know how it makes us better. And we're not going to cross that threshold of being a great school system unless we contribute to it and put into it. And I believe that that's the model that will work.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from counselors? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
No.
Ward 6,
No.
Ward 7.
No.
Motion passed by vote of 4 to 3.
Thank you, Superintendent. Madam Clerk, I believe we're heading into executive sessions.
Yes, executive session, item ES1, executive session to discuss real estate negotiations of which the premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive bargaining position of the city. Requested action to enter into an executive session pursuant to Maine Revised Statutes Annotated Title I, Section 4056C, to discuss real estate negotiations of which the premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive bargaining position of the city.
May I have a motion,
So
please?
moved.
Counselor
Second.
Chittum, second by Counselor Najin. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Motion passed by vote of 7 to 0.
Thank you, Lewiston. We're heading into executive session. We'll not be back. Have a great night.